The next presentation we have on breaking free of agile testing dilemmas, which is by Aman King, who's a lead consultant, ThoughtWorks.
Hello everyone, can you guys hear me? Excellent, I can hear myself as well. So my name is Aman, not Vatsala, so do not confuse me. And I work for a company called ThoughtWorks. Vatsala, my co-speaker, could not make it because of an urgent work commitment, but I'll be handling the presentation. We worked on it together though. Between the two of us, we have over 17 years of experience in the agile space. Vatsala 10 and me about 7 to 8. And in ThoughtWorks, we are pretty much engrossed in this agile culture right from day one. We have been doing agile since 2001. Martin Fowler, one of the Agile Manifesto signatories, is our chief scientist. So that helps us where we do not end up struggling a lot from day one in trying to implement agile, because the teams that we join just end up doing it already. It's easier to get embedded into that mindset. That said, after having gained a lot of experience, both Vatsala and myself have started doing consultation, coaching in the agile space, the continuous delivery space. That takes us to our client offices, working with client teams, and we are no longer in our protected agile environment of ThoughtWorks. That's where we do run into a lot of dilemmas in implementing agile, making it as smooth as it could have been. And of course, we see a lot of anti-patterns and misinterpretations of agile as well. This session will be focused more on just the agile testing issues that we've collectively seen. But again, remember, at the end of this 45 minutes, you'll not have reached nirvana. You'll just have gotten glimpses of the kind of issues we have seen, and possibly hints at what you could try to solve them. I'm hoping that most of you will be able to relate with the dilemmas I'll be talking about here. Let's start by just asking ourselves, what is a dilemma, right? I'm sure the expressions kind of say it out loud, but the dictionary defines it as a situation in which you have to make a difficult choice. It's about choices, and they are difficult ones. One choice is not necessarily better than the other. So what makes agile testing a dilemma? Any inputs from you guys? I'm sure you have been trying these and have dilemmas of your own. I heard a little bit from you before when I was just having coffee. But for the sake of everyone, any problems you faced with agile testing that makes it a dilemma? Testing is still waterfall, good. So it comes a little late in the game. Anything else? Okay, involvement of testers in various aspects, including requirements and collaboration with the developers. Cool. Any more? Jump in, yes, requirement jump in any moment. So if you guys have been reading up about Agile, how it started, you'll be able to relate to some of these points there. Most of you have covered it. First of all, we want continuous delivery of software, changing requirements. Requirements come in at any point of time. A lot of face-to-face conversation, and less about necessarily tracking, defect logging, but people just expect us, tell us, and we'll fix it. And working software is how you measure progress. So you have to be delivering quality working software to make sure that you are making progress in agile terms, right? All of these lines come from the Agile Manifesto, which a lot of speakers about Agile will talk about. This happened in 2001 in Utah, USA, with multiple people getting together and coming up with this name called Agile. The history is an interesting one. You guys should explore it if you haven't already. Other than Agile, have you heard of something called Lean? Yes, I can see a lot of heads nodding. So that's One of the recent trends that has happened, so Agile is passé, Lean is a new thing. And then there are a few who say, no, hold on, Lean is not that different from Agile, we can coexist. What does Lean have to say about Agile testing and the dilemmas we face here? So Lean has a concept of muda, which is a Japanese term, which means waste. It talks about 7 wastes, out of which defects is one of them. And what they say about defects is something that a lot of people can guess, that it costs extra. If you have a defect in the system, it's going to cost you extra. First is detecting it, the effort you spend in detecting it, and of course, hopefully you want to fix it. So the effort spent in fixing it. But it's a cost that should not be passed on to the consumer and should be treated like a loss. And no business wants to go into loss. They try to mitigate it and keep it as low as possible. In other terms, you'd like to keep your defects as low as possible and not pass on the cost to the end user, right? And this was again, it came from manufacturing, so the Toyota people are the ones who first started popularizing the term. And then there were a few who jumped on and saw that there could be corollaries in the software development methodology here as well. That happened in 2003. But whatever Agile or Lean is now proposing is not actually that recent. A management guru named Deming talked about it way back. He says, cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. Eliminate the need for inspection on a mass basis by building quality into the product in the first place. So build a product which has quality embedded in it, right? Don't wait to talk about quality when you want to inspect it at the end of it. And around the same time, Boehm wrote a paper which talked about the same thing. He talked about change, and defect is one of the most frequent reasons for change. If you catch that change and implement it in the requirement phase, it's, let's say, 1. It costs you 1 unit. In analysis, it will be 10 times costlier. In design, 100 times, and so on. And this was based on studies that he had done, right? So essentially, what are all of these people saying over all of these years is testing a developed product is already too late. And if you go and test the Leaning Tower of Pisa right now, you know it's leaning. Should a tower be leaning? Clearly not, right? But can you fix it now? No, you can't. Of course, in that case, the defect has become a feature. Thousands of tourists go there every year. But probably your software product will not become such a popular tourist destination. So again, a visual of what we've been talking about. Cost of defect increases as you progress in the life cycle. What can be a possible solution? Move testing upstream. Right? Catch the defects in the requirement phase, catch the defects in the implementation phase, the design phase, and so on and so forth. What would that look like? Currently, we are talking about agile testing, and still it could be waterfallish. Yes, that is definitely a view which still exists even in agile teams. But if a QA is testing at the end, there's a cost to it, some amount of dollars, right? Let's say that testing happened a little upstream. Your cost of fixing those defects will have reduced. Slightly better than waterfall is agile in the fact that at least we do this in iteration. So there isn't enough built that you would incur a lot of cost if you detect defects in it. So that mitigates this problem to a degree, and which is one of the reasons agile is now so successful. But the question remains, how do you do this? It's simple on paper, but how do you actually implement it for your teams, right? You can attempt an answer by looking at a rectangle like this. On one side of the rectangle and the other side, let's say we are talking about testing, and we are categorizing it. The top half is about business-facing tests. The lower half is about technology-facing tests. So your business-facing are tests which are related to what end users would like to see and do with their system. Your technology-facing tests are more about architecture, more about the code you've written, more about your components. You could have another view of the rectangle. On the one side, you put support programming. On the other, you put critique the product. So what is the difference again? Critique the product obviously assumes that the product exists and you're reviewing it. A movie critic will only write a review after the movie has been released, right? On the other end, what you're talking about is doing sort of testing which supports programming or the team while the implementation is going on. So the product is not even ready, but you're still testing and still providing support to the team in terms of feedback. Again, this is not a quadrant which I came up with. Another Agile Manifesto signatory, Brian, proposed this model, if you want to call it a model, in 2003. And it's a very useful model. He goes on to speak more about it. You can read some of his papers. That said, again, it's just a model which will help you look at testing in a certain way. It doesn't remove all your dilemmas. Some sort of dilemmas is, okay, what do these quadrants represent? What kind of testing can go in there? Automation, manual, a mix of them. When should you be doing these sorts of testing? And who are the people who should be involved? So let's try to address some of them. Let's start at the bottom left. So again, something that most of you will be familiar with. We're talking about unit tests, component tests, integration tests. Move up a little bit. And now we are talking about functional UI tests, acceptance tests, which could again be automated or perhaps manual. An interesting one there is paper prototyping, which is not about testing at all. It's really testing your product at all. It's about testing your requirements themselves. So you don't even start with the requirement. You start with a blank piece of paper. You draw a screen on it, and then you talk. What should the screen have? What does the end user want to do? Will the screen help that person do that task? What should the screen lead to next? So you get a basic prototype on paper. People sometimes now use tools like Balsamiq. And then you get some validation on the paper prototype itself. You get a few sample end users to look at them and see whether this flow is intuitive to them. So that's how you can validate your requirements as well. So that's beginning to move your testing upstream. On the right hand side are things which are a little more traditional. For example, in Agile, you'll still do a showcase or a user acceptance testing. That's where your expectation is you have delivered some working software at the end of an iteration or end of a release, and you're having your business stakeholders or perhaps even end users look at the product and actually use it. We talked about exploratory testing. So again, it assumes that a product is working and testers can go about interacting with it. Of course, usability, and we should definitely add accessibility to it. Desk check is something interesting where it's somewhere in between of support, programming, and critique product. That's the sort of testing that we talk about. When you say that your story has been implemented, a user story, a feature, a developer claims has been implemented, the tester actually goes to that developer's desktop or laptop and tests this right there. And that then gives immediate feedback. No, this acceptance criteria, this scenario is not working. Please continue developing. It's not done yet. That's what you call as desk check. On the lower half of critiquing the product, but on a technology perspective, is obviously stuff like performance tests and security tests. This could again be a mixture of automation and manual. I'm sure we'll soon be having that hacking session, which will probably delve into more detail. So when do you do this? We've already touched upon it a little bit. So paper prototyping can start right at the requirements gathering phase, ideation. It can continue iteratively, even through design and implementation. And of course, you can have your UI tests built per screen. As soon as the developer starts making a screen, not the entire flow, you can still start writing automation tests around them. Your unit tests obviously go hand in hand with the units that you have been creating, so it can go in parallel with your design and implementation. On the right-hand side, of course, we are talking more emphasis on the testing phase and perhaps post-deployment. Post-deployment could be per iteration in your showcases, or it could be post-release. And who are the typical people involved? The roles? Pretty intuitive there. So again, this was the quadrant proposed by Brian in 2003. There are a couple of people, Janet and Lisa, who went into more detail, elaborated a little bit more, and that's mentioned in their book called Agile Testing. Anand Bhagwar already talked about the test pyramid, so this is like a quick recap of it. I'll not go into too much detail. But looking at the left half of the quadrants, supporting programming and mostly a focus on automation, there's this view which is important to bring in that distinction of how your business-facing test should be and how your technology-facing test should be. Your business-facing tests are dealing with the entire system, mostly through a UI that the end user will also be interested in. Your technology-facing tests are mostly about units and components and are typically about code and architecture. Again, so as you move up to down, as Anand again mentioned, there's a cost in terms of time. UI tests take a long time. Surveys which are like integration level take a little lesser, but the fastest are your unit tests. At the same time, there's a level of increasing confidence.